One early morning, Jean woke up and felt very sick. Her body was heavy and she felt pain all over her body. With the current global COVID-19 pandemic, she started to panic and worry what caused this heaviness and pain over her body. It is caused by a bacteria or viruses that attack her body. She took her phone to check what causes such effects on her body. To know that, she looked for the following facts about bacteria and viruses. She found out that bacteria are the most abundant organisms on the planet and they live in the almost every area on our earth. Long before high-tech microscopes were invented, back on the late 1600s, Anton van Leeuwenhoek discovered bacteria using only an homemade microscope. Isn't it amazing? With the use of powerful microscope, we have to come to know today that bacteria are single-celled organisms which differs from the other single-celled organisms. Bacteria are prokaryotes, which means that their DNA is inside the cytoplasm and they also don't have a nucleus. You wouldn't find other structures as well as inside the bacteria that are commonly found in a eukaryote cell, but even so they still meet the criteria to be considered as a living organisms. Bacteria came to have three distinct shapes. There are spirals and spherical in shape. The chemicals that are found in the cell wall of bacteria determines their shapes. Their cell walls are rigid, protecting the cell from most threats. Ribosomes, cytoplasms, cell wall, cell membrane, and DNA are commonly structures that can be found within the bacterial cells.
Have you ever looked at some pictures of bacteria? Have you noticed that they have hair-like structures around their body? It is not just a common set of hair, but something that is fixed to the cell membrane of bacteria and except the cell wall through a pore. These are called flagella. They help the bacteria move by rotating. Bacteria can have one flagellum, more than one flagellum, or not having one at all. Bacteria that has no flagella will look like a crippled man that cannot unless acted by another force such as wind. Bacteria is parted into two kingdoms, the Archaeobacteria and the Eubacteria. Thriving in extreme conditions that many organisms could not able to withstand, that's where Archaeobacteria was known of. On the other hand, the Eubacteria do not thrive in extreme conditions, but they rather live in places such as human bodies. In reality, as you are watching this video, billions of bacteria are moving around your body. But you don't have to worry because our bodies have mutually symbiotic relationship with them. There are also bacteria that are responsible for oxygen level that exist in our atmosphere today, and they are called the autotrophic eubacteria.
Have you ever wondered how these bacteria multiply? Well, bacteria cells use a process of binary fusion to reproduce. It is a process where one cell divides to form two new identical daughter cells. Binary fusion is considered as a form of asexual reproduction. Let me explain the asexual reproduction for you. Asexual reproduction is a process of cellular division that requires only one parent cell and produces two identical daughter cells. Some species of bacterial cells reproduce using a process known as sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction produces a unique individual genetic material coming from two parent cells. Bacteria sexually reproduce using a process known as conjugation. Conjugation is a process where a thread-like object joins the two prokaryotes together until the one of the bacterial cells has been transferred to one another. When the DNA has transferred completely, two bacterial cells separate. Conjugation allows the DNA to vary in the offsprings.
Overall, bacteria are more helpful than they are harmful. They help us to break down food within our body, and they help us to clean up the environment. Of course, there are some species of bacteria that are harmful and will give an organisms some type of disease or cause other harmful effects. Bacteria produce many common foods that we eat on a regular basis, including yogurt, cheese, milk, pickles, and more. On the other hand, some bacteria cause food to spoil or go bad. This is done by the bacteria breaking the food chemical down. Spoiled foods normally smell very bad and can make you sick if you eat those foods.
Bacteria that live in soil keep our environment cleaner by helping to decompose dead organisms. Decomposers break down the large molecules of a dead organism into smaller molecules, which allows living organisms to use the molecules again. These bacteria are known as the recyclers because of their ability to change unusable molecules into usable molecules. Some species of bacteria feed on oil and gas. These bacteria are used by scientists to clean up an oil spill or gas leak. They change the harmful chemicals of the oil and gas into harmless substances.
Bacteria are also capable of infectious disease. An infectious disease is an illness that can be passed from one organism to another either directly or indirectly. An infectious disease can be spread directly by hugging, kissing, or touching the infected person. It can be spread indirectly by sharing food or drink and even inhaling particles of infected person's sneeze. In year 1928, scientists developed a medicine that cured diseases caused by bacteria called antibiotics. Antibiotic is a compound that kills bacterial cells without damaging an organism's own cells. Antibiotics have saved countless lives since their discovery.
After that Jean came to know the facts about bacteria, she took a look as well as the facts on viruses, and she found out that a virus is a very small particle that is non-living and that invades and reproduces within a living cell. A virus is considered to be non-living because it is not a cell. They also don't use energy, grow, or respond to their environment. The only similarity that a virus has with a living cell is that it is able to reproduce. A virus needs a living cell in order to reproduce. The organism which a virus invades is called a host. The host is an organism that is harmed by a parasite.
Remember that this is a symbolic relationship. Viruses act like a parasite. Nearly all of them will destroy the cell that they invade. Every living organism could potentially be infected by a virus. A virus can maybe differ in shape and sizes. A type of virus called bacteriophage, meaning bacteria ether, infects bacterial cells. All viruses contain an outer coat with the genetic material inside of that coat. The DNA of the virus contains the information necessary to make new viruses. Soon after a virus attached to a cell, it quickly enters the cell. The virus DNA takes the cell over, directing all the cell's function.
There are two types of virus, active and hidden. The active virus takes charge of the cell immediately, telling the cell's DNA to make new virus proteins and replicate the virus DNA. The DNA and proteins become new viruses. This process will continue until the cell had produced so many new viruses that the cell can no longer hold anymore and it bursts. The hidden virus enters the cell and its DNA joins together with the cell's DNA. The virus will stay immobile until it decides and to turn on and takes over the functions of the cell.
If you have ever had a cold, the flu, or chickenpox, then you have had a viral infectious disease. Moderate viral infectious diseases include influenza, measles, rabies, and polio. With advances in medicine, these viral infectious diseases are generally mild. There are other viral infectious diseases that can cause death, such as acquired immunodeficiency syndrome or AIDS. There are no cures for viral infections, but there are medicines that relieve some of their symptoms. A vaccine is a molecule that causes the body to produce chemicals that will wipe out the virus or bacterial cell.
Vaccines help to prevent the spread of infectious diseases by putting a dead or changing the version of the virus or bacterial cells into the body. This will put the body on alert to target and kill the invading virus or bacterial cell. Looking at the fact she found out, she couldn't come up for a sure answer and decided to call a doctor. At least, she found out that what was happening in her body may be caused by one of these two.
That's the end of our discussion. I hope you learned something. Let's have an activity. For your activity, let's test if you could still remember what we have discussed. For this activity, you need to answer 10 questions. You will be given 5 seconds to answer each question. Question number 1. Who discovered the first bacterial cell in the late 1600s? For letter A, Albert Einstein. Letter B, Robert Hooke. Letter C, Anton van Leeuwenhoek. And letter D, Richard Boyce Burt. For question number 2, what organisms are the most abundant on Earth? Letter A, human. Letter B, insects. Letter C, bacteria. And letter D, mammals. For question number 3, bacteria do not have a nucleus. What does this classify them as? Letter A, eukaryote single cells. Letter B, prokaryotes protists. Letter C, single-celled. And letter D, multi-celled. For question number 4, what is the shape of bacteria cell? Letter A, square. Letter B, rectangle. Letter C, triangle. And letter D, sphere. Question number 5. What determines the shape of bacteria cell? Letter A, chemicals in the cell wall. Letter B, chemicals in the cytoplasm. Letter C, chemicals in the cell membrane. And letter D, none of this. For question number 6, which is structure that is not found in bacteria cell? Letter A, ribosome. Letter B, nuclear membrane. Letter C, cell wall. And letter D, none of this. For question number 7, a flagellum is like a whip-like structure that A, keeps a bacteria warm. Letter B, detends a bacterial cell. Letter C, helps bacterial cell moves. And letter D, give bacterial cell a cool hairstyle. For question number 8, which kingdom of bacteria lives in extreme condition? Letter A, Eucobacteria. Letter B, Archaeabacteria. Letter C, Protists. And letter D, Fungi. For question number 9, what process do bacterial cells use to produce asexually? Letter A, conjugation. Letter B, binary fission. Letter C, sexual reproduction. And letter D, respiration. For question number 10, what process do bacterial cells use to produce sexually? Letter A, conjugation. Letter B, binary fission. Letter C, sexual reproduction. And letter D, respiration. Let's see if you got all the correct answer. Well done! Thank you for your participation.